do I know who killed JFK? No, but I think it was Alan Dulles, allegedly. Not with the gun. I don't think Alan Dulles shot JFK, but I think he set things in motion. And it was, it's interesting to hear it kind of doesn't matter because it's been so long, but it also does matter in the sense that it's I kind of think
they killed the president.
Yes. The CIA probably just killed the president. And that sort of set a lot of things in motion for, and it just also makes me think what's the point if, we elect anybody that really wants to do something different and is no, we're not going to just be a slave to business interests. The CIA will just kill them.
Well, that was basically, I feel a lot of the thesis of that where QAnon kind of landed on it was this idea, say what you will about JFK and the Kennedys and their dirty Irish back dealings, which there was a lot to be said about that. But if there is this cabal or arm or deep state that will just, basically do an auto coup, auto golpe, or whatever the fuck it's called, it doesn't matter. And you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. When you started to say that you thought that Alan Dulles killed JFK, I really thought you were going to say Alan Dershowitz killed JFK. And
I mean,
I'm willing to
out because the Dersh will clip chimp us and sue us for defamation.
God, that'd be so good.
Well, just like TrueAnon, this is not, this is entertainment purposes only. We're not alleging anything. We're just reporting, on what people are saying, or we're just gossiping for comedy and entertainment purposes. So you don't need to sue us. And nobody needs to sue us. We're not actually suable. Especially not the Dersh.
We don't have any assets for you to come and take. It was Alan Dershowitz with the pierogi in Dealey Plaza.
Yes. JK. Hi, I'm Constant Gardner.
And I'm AJ.
You're not going to say the last name? That's okay.
Should I do AJ Hiddell?
Yeah, I mean...
Is it worth... I mean, because we were... it's worth...
Yeah.
That's where I got my name from.
That's where you got the name. Okay. But yeah, and this is the Denver Protest Podcast. So, welcome. We're trying a new... cold open thing. We'll see.
Trying to do a cold open thing. By the time you've gotten to this point of the podcast, if this stays in, it will have worked or not worked.
Right.
But we're without Bug today.
Bug's taking some time off.
The fascists sent their raccoons after her. It almost worked.
That's what I heard. So they're, they're recovering and taking some time. And, we're taking over. So they are, our fearless leader in terms of the protest recaps and the upcoming protests. So we're going to try to do a good job with that. But just know that we may not do as good of a job as Bug because they are actually, that's kind of their thing. So, yeah, here we are. It's Sunday, August 17th in the evening. Lovely Sunday. And we're there. So should we get into it? We talk about what happened this past week?
Yeah, let's do it. So I was a little unplugged from shit this week. It seems like it was a slower week than usual. We say this every week. We had the standard stuff. We had the Jeanette Vizgara vigil. Believe we had, the one that actually kind of coalesced was a somewhat impromptu no concentration camps in Colorado. Protest or demonstration or whatever you want to call it. It was kind of like a same day or like the night before kind of thing. So there wasn't a whole lot of runway for it. Despite that, some people did come out. We were posted up on Free Iran Guy's turf.
Was he there?
No, he was not there. He was not there.
Took
Yeah, he
took
was.
the Saturday off. It's all right. He worked hard.
He's one of the hardest workers in the game. But yeah, so we were posted up there. Honestly, I can see why he goes there, because like being like at street level and like putting your signs more or less in front of cars really makes you feel like they're actually reading them, even if you are, in our case, just like a group of like 10 people, or in his case, one Free Iran guy. It does feel like an effective spot, but it was pretty good. Like there was homemade signs out there. People had blowhorns. Wait, what's a blowhorn? No, megaphones. People had megaphones. Blowhorns are the...
You're confusing it with a bullhorn. Bullhorn and megaphone are kind of interchangeable, I think.
Thank you for the bailout on that, because as I was saying, I was like, I'm not sure if that's what that was. But megaphone...
And then air horns are the things that are like...
That's... Yes. All right. Cool. I'm glad that we were able to get there. Eventually, at one point... we decided to march to the governor's mansion, which, as I'm sure anyone listening to this knows, he does not live there. He lives in some... I don't actually know exactly where he lives. There was an article on Westword, I think, about him buying like a $5 million condo in the middle of Boulder, which I didn't. I clicked on the link and then I was like, I don't want to see fucking pictures of this. This is going to make me very, very angry. It's
going to piss you off. That's fair.
It's going to make me so fucking angry. But we did wind up marching. Again, it was fucking maybe 10 people if we count some people as 2 people. Being very generous, but we did wind up going down there, sit outside the governor's mansion, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is down there at 8th and Logan, I want to say.
Yeah, that area, 8th, Logan, and...
It's actually, it's a shame because it is a nice building, as you would expect a governor's mansion to be, but it just goes... I'm pretty sure, and again, maybe we'll do this when we do our whole Polis episode, which I do think we should do.
Which we will be doing, yeah.
That one's like, that's gotta happen. We should do it for his birthday. But he's the first governor, I think he's like the first governor since like the 50s to not live in it, which... Again, like even if he lived there, it wouldn't make him less shitty, but it does just kind of draw out the contrast of like the governor who, like, ideally I would think is like a representative of his constituents or his, you know, his voting base or whatever the fuck. It was like, I'm not going to live in this multi-million-dollar house in the middle of some of the most expensive property in Colorado. I am going to live in this other multi-million-dollar house in the middle of some of the other most expensive property in Colorado, which fucking sucks on principle.
Yes. I mean, to be fair, he is a representative of his constituents. His constituents are other millionaires. So he's living away from the huddled poor masses, which is what the rich kind of like to do. So it's, he is representative of his constituency. It's just that his constituency is not the voters and the people of Colorado. It's the ye old 1%, as it were. But yeah, I've always understood, my understanding has always been that he lives in some fancy spot in Boulder, which definitely tracks.
Well, and it's like, when we were out there, I was kind of struck by like how just accessible it was. Like they have like a wrought iron fence and like whatever the fuck, obviously, but like we were just standing there. I'm like, oh shit, like that's like it felt like minimal levels of, I don't want to say security or whatever the fuck, but it felt it would be easy to, if like some hoodlums during Halloween wanted to toilet paper the governor's mansion, it would be easy to do.
Yeah, it is kind of right.
It's right there. It's by the fucking Trader Joe's. It's like,
it's right by the Trader Joe's. And yeah, it is pretty accessible. So whatever. And he probably just doesn't like the decor in there. It's not modern enough. It's probably
that's exactly what it feels like
for him or whatever. But like, I don't know. Fuck that guy. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's good. I think, yeah, doing a protest out right in front of the Capitol especially a small one, it does seem like you get decent visibility out there. You get a lot of people driving by. I actually drove by the protest, and we give you guys a little honk honk.
Oh, what? Are
So
you serious?
yeah, yes, I
No, no
did.
shit. I got there a little
Yeah.
bit late. Did you see me there?
I couldn't really get a good look, in part because the driver of the car that I was in, was busy looking at the protests and accidentally ran the red light at 14th
Oh,
and
hell
Broadway.
yeah.
So then it's all right. No one was hurt. It's okay. But yeah, so no, I couldn't really like make out. I just saw I saw a no concentration camps in Colorado sign. I did see that.
Hell yeah.
But I couldn't really like make out who was there and, whatever. But, small but mighty group, of people. I
No,
think
it was
that's
good. It was good.
awesome.
And it was thrown, I don't want to say thrown together makes it sound a little bit too slapdash. It was kind of thrown. It was kind of thrown together.
I mean, I feel like the organizers would agree. It was kind of like a last minute.
Yeah.
They just kind of were like, all right, well, let's go out and do that, which is super valid. I mean, I think if you want like a huge attendance, ideally you have like more, you call it a long runway, you take a little time, but also to bring up 2020, like we would do kind of, spontaneous protests fairly often. So I don't, I think it's okay and good to just kind of be like, all right, well, we're all pissed off and we want to, go protest. So let's get a group of, 10 to 20 people together and go do it. Why not?
Yeah. No, I mean, I had the wildcat in protests. And it's
A
cool because
wildcat,
like
totally.
it's kind of nice in smaller to medium-sized demonstrations where you can like, I find a little bit easier. I don't want to say this fucking word. I can't believe it's coming out of my mouth. But network. You get to like, God damn it, dude! It's so fucking bad. You get to form you form connections with people.
Yes.
Which
yes,
ideally
totally.
will lead to like further, whatever the fuck. I didn't need to explain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You get to make more of a human connection when it's a smaller group.
Yes.
And that can lead to, other good organizing stuff. We'll say that, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I do want to say, like, to shout out to, like, this is one of the things I love about like the kind of protest community, like we were saying a little bit earlier, is like, even if it doesn't, even if there's not 200 people there, even if like you yourself are worried about like not making a difference going out, like it still is worth it to at least try. And who knows, maybe there will be 15 people who show up and then they go yell at an empty building where the governor is supposed to live. Does that have utility? Honestly, I don't super care. I think there is there's some kind of intrinsic value in it, but I like the idea that like just give it a shot and see what happens. I think
absolutely. I think so. And I mean, hey, like I said, I saw a no concentration camps in Colorado sign from my car. So if even a few people who weren't aware of that saw the sign and were like, well, what the fuck do you mean concentration camps in Colorado? That's sort of how you play this long game of drumming up awareness, and getting people thinking and talking about that shit, because it's definitely not something that most people are aware is even in the works. So, I think it's a good thing.
And there was one shout out to the guy. I think, is it Rise Up or Rise Against, that group that
really, AJ? Really?
I know.
Those people, okay. What? Mr. Cakes was there. I saw the picture of Mr.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what that is, but maybe it was him. Anyway, there was a guy from that media organization, which I don't know the full lore on the relationship, but he was making the point about drawing the comparison between the concentration camps, internment camps, if to use a slightly sanitized language, that were constructed in Colorado during the 1940s for Japanese Americans. Which I do think is a topic that we've expressed interest in kind of covering at some point too. And I, like you were saying, someone driving by sees a sign like concentration camps in Colorado, what? And it's like, well, actually, pushes up eyeglasses.
Right.
Like
it's happened before, and it could happen again. No, it's I do think people, a lot of people aren't aware that we did have an internment camp for Japanese Americans and Japanese people here in Colorado, and we did. So yeah, it is becoming a trope at this point, but topic for a future episode. We definitely will be covering that history at some point. So
yeah.
Stay tuned.
We should do a group field trip to the internment camp, which sounds fucking weird to say as I say that sentence, but I do think it would be interesting to. I would love it if we could somehow organize, like, go to like the Ludlow massacre site, go to the Sand Creek massacre site, go to all like the Colorado labor wars sites. If I don't know. I don't mean we as in
these are
me and
real,
you, like,
real history nerd hours. But I like it. I like these ideas. I think I like that. I think that would be cool. I've never been to. I've definitely wanted to. At least the Sand Creek massacre. I want to
go there so bad.
Yeah.
We
should organize a field trip.
That would be cool.
Let's do it.
Have you seen the exhibit they have at the? I know we're getting off here, but at the Colorado History Museum about the Sand Creek massacre.
No, is it there right now?
Yeah, I think it's a permanent exhibit on the top floor. And I do want to shout it out because I do think it's a pretty good encapsulation.
I've never been to the Colorado History Museum, which is
what?
Kind of unforgivable given who I am and what I'm about. That's pretty bad. I should go.
Yeah.
All right, sold. I will go. But no, that's good to know. I think, yeah, we have to talk about the Sand Creek massacre because that's a really, really dark period in Colorado history.
It's a really dark period, and it's one that I feel like, I wasn't born and raised here. Maybe they talk about it in schools. Like, I'm willing to bet that they do, but like, yeah. I did not hear about it as part of, you hear about some of those kind of massacres. Wounded Knee is like
that a lot of people hear about. But to be fair to Colorado schools that I do disparage a lot, we in middle school, I remember we did a whole unit on Sand Creek and had like a mock trial for the soldiers. And
that's pretty cool.
We went pretty deep into Sand Creek, so I have to give credit to Colorado middle school social studies teachers in that regard. I do feel that I do remember that part of my education. But all right, we should probably talk about the other protest stuff.
Yeah.
Weekly peace vigil, CD7 Watermelon. That is a small pro-Palestine action that happens over in Arvada off of Wadsworth by the In-N-Out Burger, across from the Arvada Costco. So shout out to them for consistently going out there and spreading the word. We love to see that out in the suburbs.
Yeah. That one. And again, I just want to say, if any of these protests are changing or need adjustment, like, please do let us know. I know that a lot of the people who organize these protests are super diligent about informing the moderation team about like changes or updates or if they're being discontinued, but just wanted to throw that out there. Like, if we ever do say anything that is no longer current or correct, please do let us know.
Yes, let us know, because these are ongoing protests. As far as we know, they're still going on, but we obviously don't make it out to all of them. So, if you show up to a protest ever and you're like, okay, nobody came, definitely, and it's something that we either have listed in the subreddit or the Discord or that we have announced here on the podcast, definitely shoot us a message and let us know, and we can either stop listing it or reach out to the organizers and just clarify what's going on, because we don't want to send you guys out to a non-existent protest, but we may not always have the most up-to-date information, so we appreciate your help in that regard.
Yeah. And on that note, we also have the weekly protests, the set protests, I should say, about test the takedowns, the ones at Gabe Edmonds' office. I do want to quickly talk about and get your take on this. Like, I feel like over the past 2 weeks or so, there has been an increase in the amount of discussion within the, whatever the fuck you want to call this, community, about how, like, things are slowing down. Why aren't there more things happening? Like, where is the energy? I kind of feel that myself a little bit, but I'm wondering what your thoughts on that. Do you think it's a natural, like, ebb and flow cycle thing? Do you think, like, Because I remember we were when we were out there last night, we were talking a little bit about how like Los Angeles, for example, is still kind of putting the pedal on the ground, and like it's a different environment, different reasons, different contexts. But I do think it's a conversation that is worth broaching here.
Oh man, I mean, I wish I knew. I do think that there is a natural ebb and flow. That said, yeah, I mean, apparently LA's been going hard for months now at this point, and we're not hearing any coverage about it, which I think
Yeah.
is interesting. I don't know. I mean, I wish I knew the answer. I do think too it relates to like people's outrage and their material conditions. I think everybody was really, really pissed off at the beginning, when Trump was inaugurated, and I think some of that has died down. I mean, I think the Tesla takedowns are pretty instructive, because there was a lot of energy around anti-Tesla and Musk hatred, because he was, very visible in like dismantling our government and like, threatening people's jobs and stuff. And he has since sort of like, retreated into the shadows, I guess, back to his lair or whatever
Like
the
a
fuck he does.
vampire, like an Afrikaner vampire.
Yeah, he's not cool enough to be a vampire, first of all. But
No.
yes, in that, some night swamp creature thing. But so I think, I was reading actually on the subreddit that their Tesla takedown is shifting to be more like a little bit broader. Let's see what it said. The note was the Tesla takedown, they're now calling the protest against tyranny. And it's indivisible, and they're just like broadening the scope to target the regime and not specifically Musk. I think because Musk, they figured out he's like the most hated man in America. Him and Trump had like their little, lovers quarrel or whatever the fuck, falling out happen. And so he's like less around. But I mean, I think part of it has to do with, what the administration is doing, like whatever fucked up ghoulish shit that they're doing at the time, and if people are feeling directly impacted by that. I mean, I think there also could be a larger conversation about the efficacy of protests, and that like I do think people individually and just like as a group kind of lose steam over time. I mean, I've definitely felt this myself, where like I absolutely support protesting, and think it's good to get out there. And I don't think that I don't think our government actually gives a shit how pissed we are. And I don't, I think whether we have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people out in the streets, I don't actually think that is going to make them change their policy at all, because I don't think that they care like what the masses of voters have to say. So I think people probably get a little bit disillusioned. I mean, there can also be something to be said for, I guess, if we're having these kind of very permitted, above board types of actions.
Just say liberal. You want to say
okay,
liberal.
liberal.
Just
I
say
want to say
liberal.
liberal. If we're having really libbed up protests, I think that those people are going to run out of steam a lot faster, and are going to start to feel like, what are we even fucking doing out here? Like you can only go march around so many times before you're sort of like, what else do we do? And I think there's also something to be said for like, I don't know, August is a slow time. Everybody, it's hot as shit.
Dog days of summer, baby.
The dang old dog days of summer. Everybody's going back to school, and so people with kids are busy with that. And it just is like, I am self-employed with various gigs and such, and like definitely at least one of my income streams generally is pretty damn slow in August, just because whatever, there's just something about it. So like, I don't really know. I don't think it's time to give up hope yet, but I think there's probably things that we could do to increase engagement and turnout, or like, is that even the thing that matters the most? I don't know. I mean, this is something I could probably go on about forever. But yeah, I wish I had an answer. But I also think tinfoil hat on. I feel like there's always wreckers in the fucking midst, and whether it's just a constant combining of smaller groups to like make a bigger group, or like getting everybody to go to a bunch of meetings, or kind of watering things down in that way, of God, what is the word that I'm thinking of? It's not counterinsurgency, counter. Okay,
productivity.
I can't think of it, and we've talked about it in another. It's the tactic of basically just like controlled opposition. That's what it is. Controlled opposition.
Oh, yeah.
I think controlled opposition is effective at like kind of letting people let off just enough steam that they're like, okay, I've let off enough steam, and now I'm going to kind of go back to my life. But I think, I do think things will ramp up again as, the material conditions start to worsen for Americans. But I also just don't think we're really feeling like the economic impact of the tariffs shit and like all of these mass layoffs and stuff. Like, I don't think a critical mass of people is feeling the strain hard enough yet. And my hypothesis is that once people do, things will start to ramp up again. But I don't know.
Yeah, it does feel like that we're on the doorstep of, I think like the official term that economists use for it is the cool zone.
Yeah.
When things get really cool and good and normal. I think we're really close to that. I think we're about to enter the cool zone of Weimar Germany or Argentina in the early 2000s, where bread costs one wheelbarrow of dollars. Although
Yes.
you don't really hear too much about inflation anymore, which I guess is good.
Well, it's just because everybody's accepted as reality. I just saw an article that said that grocery prices are up 23% since last year.
Those fucking eggs, man. I'll say this. This is a good time to be a guy who does not like eggs. Last couple of years. I'm really making a windfall by not buying eggs.
Yeah, no, you are. It's devastating to the egg loving community for sure.
But yeah. I was thinking, like, because there was that again, kind of wildcat or impromptu demonstration that happened earlier this year. Like, I think it was at the beginning of June, when LA was like really going off, and organizers here in Denver had like a protest that was kind of organized in response to that. It was on like a Tuesday night in the beginning of June.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, like, that felt a lot like 2020.
Yeah.
And it felt like a lot, it was the closest kind of energy and tone and timbre and I don't want to say vibe, but vibe to what was happening in 2020, where there was a mass of people who were like clearly like very fucking angry, obviously. I think this kind of gets overshadowed a lot when people kind of talk and remember about 2020. Like, the world was ending. Like, there was, we were doing the bubonic plague again. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that, like, everybody was like, okay, this is actually like, the end is extremely fucking nigh. And then there was this flashpoint of George Floyd, and everybody's out of work. Everybody, couldn't fucking leave their houses. And then it was just this crazy level of civil disobedience or civil insurrection, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And I guess it's difficult to expect that those type of super conditional and circumstantial conditions would be replicated. But I do remember thinking at the beginning of the summer, I was like, oh shit, like, this feels as much like that as it ever has since then.
Yep. No,
I hasn't materialized.
I 100% agree with all of that. That was June 10th was that day, that Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it was, very 2020 coded, including the cops just going hard as fuck.
Yeah.
That week they did. But yeah, I mean, it was because we all, in 2020, it was like, okay, so the government really is about to just let us all die here. Like, we're all just fucking dying on mass. There's like refrigerated trucks full of bodies, and they really expect us to just, they're not going to really provide much in the way of relief. And we're all supposed to, like, I guess, like, work and like while we're like dying of, I mean, it was just, I remember personally feeling like I don't really have much to lose right now. And if I were to like get shot by a cop, it's kind of just whatever at this point, because everything is so fucking grim and bleak. And so like, I do think that, I don't think things are bad enough for the average American yet, but I do think that is coming. And I think a lot of that will have to do with sort of what the administration does in the next like 6 months to a year about how they how authoritarian is their crackdown and all of that. So the shit in DC is definitely, that's the kind of shit that will make people riot, but like that's only happening in DC. I don't know, or only happening on that scale in DC. We'll see. But I think we like to tell ourselves that like the US is unique, either uniquely bad in terms of like we don't have the solidarity that other countries have, or like uniquely good and that like this shit couldn't happen here. I think most of us are over that whole thing, but I don't know, there's still libs. Like my friend was telling me he was like hanging out with his friend who's like, in their parents, and like the parents are kind of like moderate conservative types, and like their take on politics was like China is going to collapse any day now. And I was like, no, I really had like a solid 5-minute laugh where I was like, how do you live in the United States of America in 2025? And like your take is like, it's, not looking great for the Chinese right now. Like, bro, do we live in the same country? And my friend was like, well, I mean, no, we don't though, because these people live in Boulder in a house that they bought in 1995 for, $20,000 or whatever.
Yeah, so for a bag of chips and a Coors Light.
A lot of these people are not, it's like, we're very plugged in and dialed in to what's happening, but a lot of people are checked out and they're not going to check in until it starts hitting them in the wallet, or their family members start dying, or whatever the fuck could happen. It's like people are not, I don't know. And it's also wild learning about Nazi Germany and the fact that like so many people just kind of continued on with their lives while people 10 miles away were getting slaughtered en masse in concentration camps. There were people just like doing their thing, living their lives, being like, welp, it is what it is. It's just kind of, I don't know.
Well, I think your point of that, like, we don't live in the same country, I think really can't be emphasized enough. And I think this is one of the more frustrating things. And like, I talk to people who, God bless them, and I wish I had a little bit more of this sometimes, like, don't just think about like this shit all the time, and it's peripheral to their lives,
right?
And like I just want to be very clear, I do not begrudge anybody that whatsoever. It is hard enough to be a fucking person, and like I don't expect anyone to care like to the degree that it like becomes this all-encompassing thing. But it's like, and I hear them talk about, and they use terms like the United States and like this country and I don't want to be like full Ned Beatty in fucking Network, but like there is no United States in the way that it's in that sense, it is
more like divided states. Am I right?
That is cutting political analysis, and that's why people come to this show.
Right.
But it's like you functionally do not live in the same country as like, just to go back to the beginning, like as like if you're someone who lives in like a 1-bedroom and is on Medicaid and goes to a food bank, which there are millions and millions and millions of people of, or even if you're like 1 step above that or 2 steps above that, like you functionally do not live in the same country as a Jared Polis. You functionally do not live in the same country as a Diana DeGette. Like they do not. You live in the same country in as much as like you're in the same fucking time zone in whatever Koppen climactic zone as them, but not in any way that matters materially or politically. So I think that it is a salient observation to say that this country that is like a facsimile of a burning Chuck E. Cheese. Like there is people here who are extremely wealthy and are extremely comfortable. Obviously, these are the people who are in power, and like this is not a new observation, but like it's not bad enough for them, or even bad enough for most of the people below them, like you were saying. But I know that we're going along on this, but I do really want to say that when we talk about like why do we even do this, like why do we even bother protesting, why do we bother like fucking going to Zoom meetings or whatever the fuck organizing in 2025 looks like. It's so when things do get that bad, when you build these connections, you build these organizations, and you build these groups, so when there are moments of contingency, you're already there together.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That is the point, is that like it might feel like nothing is happening now, but the whole years, decades where nothing happened and weeks where decades happen type beat. I think that the point is those of us who see that shit coming and know that it's coming, like, are getting ready and building connections and organizing because we know it's coming, but like the rest of the country's gonna come around, and all of the libs in my life know who to call if shit pops off and they need to I don't know, whatever they might need,
fuck
if they
off to the woods.
Yes, fuck off to the woods, get some free produce, learn how to legally and safely operate a firearm. You can be that person in the libs' lives, and it's good to have good relationships and connections and community with other leftists, because like we know it's coming, but it is frustrating to sort of be in this little in-between land. So yeah.
Should we do journalism?
We should do journalism.
Should we do one journalism, please? At the
Let's do a journalism.
Yeah, I feel like it's a broad topic, but I do think there's kind of like hyper community specific local shit that a lot more about. I have been super unplugged to it, so.
Well, I love that for you. I mean, genuinely, I love that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought journalism broadly could be a good topic for us to discuss this week. And yeah, there is a lot to cover. I guess I will start with, we talked about last week when it was just Bug and I, and we talked about the Bennito Kelty article in the Westword about, that said like I think the headline was like 3 elderly people attacked, and it had kind of like a menacing looking picture of a protester in black. That was taken by one of the alleged victims, which is a guy named Andrew Mora. So we talked about this last week about sort of the slant, what we thought was Bennito's slant on the article, that he didn't, really maybe investigate the other side as well as he could have, and that the protesters who were there were alleging that this guy, Andrew Mora, who said he was a photojournalist, they were alleging that this guy had been like groping and possibly sexually assaulting them, and that he was getting all up in their space, taking pictures really close to their faces and stuff, and that they basically like told him to, kick rocks. He wouldn't get out of there, and that he had swung on them and they swung back. Yeah, and that was basically that. The article said that he portrayed himself as, I'm just an innocent victim. I'm just a regular guy out here doing a journalism, taking journalistic photos, and like I don't know why these scary Antifas attacked me. And so Bug and I definitely went pretty hard against Bennito and said like, that we were pissed that he didn't maybe investigate the whole story, and why was he just like repeating this dude's claims wholesale. and that people, and basically, which I will stand by, that like if you are groping people, you should expect people to throw hands. Like you're not gonna like grab my ass and have no consequences for that. So all of that said, I went ahead and messaged Bennito Kelty on Reddit because I had been interviewed by him, and this is a journalist that like honestly has been kind of on our side. He publishes articles really frequently about the protests and has portrayed them in pretty much a positive light every time. He's constantly writing articles that are cribbing from our upcoming protest list. So he's like, doing his part to kind of get the word out about all these protests that we have going on. And like, we're not asking him to do that. He's doing that of his own volition. So like, generally that's someone that I would consider to be like somewhat on our side, although I don't know that you could ever decide, you could ever label a journalist as like being on your side, and technically like they're not really supposed to be quote unquote on anyone's side.
I will say just real quick to what you're saying, like, and you know him much better. From the work that I've seen him do and produce, he's about as friendly as you could reasonably expect anyone writing for like a publication that works to generate like profit for itself could be. So he generally like that's the best I feel like you could possibly ask for based on the work that I've seen him do.
Correct. And that's what, and I don't know him that well. But I did, he did interview me, and I was very nervous because like a lot of, you just never know with the media and how they might spin a story. And he didn't engage in any kind of like gotcha journalism with me. And I thought he, portrayed what I had said in the interview accurately. And I was happy with that experience. So I think that, right. And even, I remember he wrote an article about the the June 14th protest where the cops had tear gassed everybody and were, being violent like they love to do. And I remember people in the community were kind of pissed about that, and they felt like he was too biased towards the police. But when I read that article, I was like, no, he actually included, he did kind of what a journalist is, again, quote unquote, supposed to do, where he printed what the cops said in their press release, which is what they always do. But pretty much most media coverage will leave it at that. They take whatever the cops say and that's all they'll print. Whereas he did actually interview protesters and print and say like the cops maintain that they gave the warning and that they tear gassed people who refused to obey the lawful order. But protesters said that the cops were the aggressors. Protesters said that they, got tear gas when they were attempting to leave, and that they got arrested when they were complying with the lawful order. So like the fact that he would even, I mean, it's a low bar, guys, I'll admit it, but the fact that he would even bother to include that says something. Most journalists are not going to do that.
Yes.
And that's just the reality, that we live in. We can talk a little bit about why that is in a minute here. But yeah, so I messaged Bennito to be like, yo, what the fuck, dude? Like, I thought we were cool. I thought you were the homie. And he was like, oh, hey, like, I'm sorry. Like, he was like, I don't, basically, he said, some people have reached out to kind of counter Mora's narrative, but nobody has given me anything that I can use. And so like, I haven't done anything with it. But like, if somebody were to give me something that I could use, that's like, verifiable, that's contradicting the narrative that this guy is giving, then like I could either potentially update the article or like write a new article correcting it. And I was like, okay, fab. That sounds great. I was like, okay, well, what do you need in order to print it? And he said, I would need 2 sources that will go on the record, like with the same, basic story of their account of things that differs from his, or I would need like some kind of video evidence that of what happened that corroborates their story. And I said, yeah, okay, great. So I like went in the Discord and was like, hey, does anybody, at this point, here's my thinking. I just want to clarify like what I was doing here is I was like, yikes, we have this article about like old people getting beat up by people in black bloc. That's not great, right? It's not a great look for the movement. And if we can basically get a different narrative out there that's like, hey, this dude is actually lying and like this is what really happened, like that would be good. Like that was where I was coming from, is like, if somebody in the community is willing to go on the record or has a video, let's get it to him, and set the record straight, because like, we don't want to be portrayed in this way if we have any say in it, right? So I asked, somebody in the community said, oh, well, we already sent those videos to him and he just ignored us. And so then I went back to him and said, dude, what the fuck? I heard you got the video. And he said, nobody sent me the video. And I said, he's saying he didn't receive the video. Do you guys got receipts? And then at that point, I was basically told to like mind my business and stop asking questions, and that they were handling it, which unfortunately, if it's just my personality. If you do this, if you say this to me, if you tell me like, stop digging, stop asking questions, I'm going to just ask questions harder. It's just, I probably should have been a journalist myself, but that shit doesn't really pay the big bucks. Unlike podcasting, which, over here, raking it in between Reddit moderating, podcasting, rolling in it. But yeah, so at that point, here's the thing, guys. I think if you don't want to go on the record for a media story like that, totally valid. I 100% understand if you're someone who's in Black Bloc and you're like, I don't want to like go tell the media my name and like put my name out there and, like I'm trying to lay low under the radar. Valid as fuck. I get that. I think, and if you don't want to do that, totally fine and understandable. And I'm not mad about that at all, because like there are very real safety concerns with that. I also think if you have video that like maybe will tell your side of the story, but like maybe also not portray you in the most positive light, or you're like worried about possible legal ramifications of like giving that video to the press, also hella valid. Like,
yeah,
don't incriminate yourself, for God's sake. You have to, I don't think anybody should like go to jail behind this like stupid Westword article, right? But like the part of the reason that like I like kind of got my panties all up in a twist about it was because I felt like people were saying that that Bennito was, ignoring them and ignoring the evidence and didn't want to show the side of the story. And when, pressed for it, nobody could back up that claim that they had actually already sent him the videos. Then somebody reached out to me and said, hey, I have a video and I'll send it to him. And here, I'm sending you a screenshot of me sending him the video. And I said, awesome, thanks so much. So I checked with Bennito and said, hey, did you receive the video? And he said, I did receive the video. I reviewed it. And he said, I'm sending it to my editors for them to review as well. He's like, but I don't personally, he's like, the video basically did show, that this guy Mora was more antagonistic towards the protesters than he let on, which I thought was very obvious. If you just like read the article, that did not come as a surprise to me. But he was like, I don't feel that the video actually proves this narrative that he was like groping and sexually assaulting people. And like, I'll see what my editors say, but like, yeah, probably not. And so that's sort of where we left it. I watched the video and I have to say that I agree with that assessment. What I saw was like a big old scuffle which there was a lot of yelling, a lot of shoving, and it was really unclear from the video that I saw who swung first. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know. I wasn't there, as many people have pointed out to me. I'll say I do think when shit becomes a news item, other people have a right to comment on it, and you don't really like get to control like who comments and who doesn't, especially if you're like trying to tell a different story. It's whatever. But I don't know who, I think for me, what's not up for debate is that dude seems like he was misrepresenting who he is and why he was there. He claims to be a photojournalist, this Andrew Mora person, but like he has no social media. Like if you're like a freelance photojournalist, like you're putting your work out there on the internet in some capacity. Like otherwise, what's the point? And he doesn't have anything like that out there. So I personally believe that is a little bit suspicious. But I'm sorry, from the video that I saw, it's very unclear as to like who turned the altercation physical first. And there are people who were there who said, I think interpretations of the events vary. So all of that to say, I feel like we probably went a little hard against Bennito, harder than we needed to, and maybe weren't very fair with that. And that also, I think it's good for journalists to have standards. I don't think it's a bad thing for them to say, okay, well, we're not just gonna print, comments on Instagram that people have made claiming that they were there. Like, we have to actually have someone who's a source. We have to do our due diligence. And he said, this is going to piss everyone off. It pissed me off. But he was like, Maura's story was corroborated by Colorado State Patrol, who was there on the scene and witnessed the whole thing. So I think I apologize to Bennito. I do think he probably could have done, I don't know what kind of follow-up, I don't know what kind of investigation work he did around this incident to determine, to investigate both sides and interview both sides. And my impression is that he probably could have done a little bit better with that. But also this idea that, like, he was just trying to, like, make everybody look bad, and he didn't have any interest in telling both sides. Like, I just don't think that that's accurate, and it doesn't jive with our past experience of him as, like, covering protests in a positive light. Another thing that happened was this new website popped up called the Denver Wire.
I was gonna say, if we want to
talk about the Denver Wire.
Yeah, but please, ISO.
So the Denver Wire is started by a local kind of self-proclaimed photojournalist named Emerson Rain. I'm not sure of their pronouns, so I'm going to use they, them, but if that is not accurate.
Is it Emerson Rain or Rain Emerson?
It's a great question.
I think it might be Rain Emerson.
It might be Rain Emerson.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Rain Emerson, excuse me. And they basically published an article that was telling the other side of the story from the perspective of the protesters. It thankfully included the video that was sent to Bennito that they didn't feel warranted, a correction or a new article. And it did quote a couple of people who were witnesses there. And probably I'm not going to open that whole can of worms on this podcast right now. But I will say that for me, it's a brand new website, the Denver Wire. It just launched on the 15th.
By its own admission. Yeah.
Right. And their only article is this article countering the Westword narrative. So, like, again, that's going to raise, okay, you guys, I'm just going to say it, tinfoil hats on. I am not saying that this person is anything other than, like, an investigative, like a freelance investigative journalist, an aspiring investigative journalist, a photojournalist. They could very well be that. And it could kind of be just a coincidence that, like, this is the first story that they started to, launch their website. I just would be remiss in not mentioning the fact that, like, this is a known CIA tactic and a known Fed tactic where, like, they will make websites and newspapers and magazines and stuff as, like, propaganda to drive a narrative. So, like, for me, being a tinfoil hat queen, when I see something like that, it's gonna, it raises the hackles and it doesn't pass the sniff test. I will also say that Rain Emerson, is Rain Emerson? Yeah, they did come into the Discord. They were very nice. They were very open. They kind of offered an explanation as to what was going on, said they didn't blame us for being skeptical. And, like, they seemed chill. I don't have any beef with them personally. And again, it could just be kind of an unfortunate coincidence that this is how it all shook out. But, like, I guess my point here is that, like, this is why, like, having some journalistic standards should be a thing, because otherwise you could just be a gossip columnist that just, like, pops up printing unverified tea, or you could be, basing the quotes in your article off of Instagram comments. And, like, anybody can say anything online. Anybody can pretend to be anything online. So, like, we do need journalists who are going to verify information before they print it, even if that information doesn't portray us in a positive light. I would rather have journalists printing information that doesn't portray us in a positive light that they've actually done their due diligence on than just people out here claiming to be journalists, and, you know, kind of printing whatever people said in the IG comments. So yeah, that's kind of my long-winded thing on this. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think a few things. I think, and again, I have been a little bit removed from it. I'm kind of catching information about it as it kind of like shrapnels out. I have,
it's accurate.
I have seen the article on the Denver Wire. I just want to say, and I think that we're all kind of in alignment here. We're not in the business of beefing with anyone, really. Like, we're not. Our primary goal as a podcast, or like our primary goal is to, in as much as we're, you know, capable, is to foster an environment where people can like come together and build bonds of solidarity with each other. That is kind of like, that's the compass point to which I think that we are all trying to set things towards. That, you know, occasionally will run up against things like this, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think that we're all gonna fucking survive this and then, you know, be stronger for it, or whatever the fuck. I don't know if I totally believe that, but I think it raises it's an interesting point that you're talking about, because like there's different levels of kind of quote unquote like capital J journalism, you know, and I think that there's a lot to be said about there's a lot of utility and there's a lot of value in people doing their kind of like gumshoe style reporting, where it's literally them live streaming shit, and you know, they don't have to follow the fucking AP style book. They didn't fucking, you know, there's no like journalistic ethics standards that they're being held to, because oftentimes those standards of ethics, and I think kind of contemporary journalism as a whole, and you know, journalism where it like dovetails with business as a whole, basically makes it antagonistic towards a lot of what we're trying to do here. In that, like, an organization like the Denver Post, for example, which is owned by a fucking hedge fund, all in global capital, like, you know, journalism at that level, where, you know, they give each other Pulitzers and jerk each other off, like they are existing for the furtherance of existing social, political, and economic structures, which I think a lot of people that we interact with would like to see changed, to varying degrees. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, I do think there's a lot of value in, you know, we talk about it a lot, like everybody has fucking cameras now. Everybody can, like, we talked about like the Do Better Denver thing, like everybody can be like a quote unquote journalist. I think there's a lot of value in kind of like grabbing the reins of information away from established media outlets that really do just exist as like a superstructural agent to further the existing economic and social and political structures, like I was saying. Having said all of that, I also do think that, and I think, you know, Westword and you know, Westword operates, I think, in a really kind of interesting journalistic tranche where, like, they do have journalistic like ethics and standards, and like they have fucking, you know, full-time reporters and all that stuff. So, and I haven't looked into like their fucking ownership structure, but I'm sure it's disappointing. But like, they're also not at the level of something like the Denver Post or like fucking, you know, Fox News channels, where they really are just pumping out what could really only be mostly identified as propaganda for, you know, the existing capitalist class. I don't think Westword does totally that. And, you know, every now and then the Denver Post will get something right. Every now and then, you know, they'll, you know, blind squirrels find us, or someone is asleep at the wheel and they'll publish good shit. I'm not trying to say that it's impossible, but ultimately at their core, once you get far up enough the chain of information distribution, its function is to further its own existence, and it is owned by the people who own everything. which are the capitalists, in case that wasn't clear.
In case that wasn't clear.
So I think that with this specific incident that we're having, I don't want it to be read as like we're saying like that everybody has to be held to these like artificial, antiquated, bourgeois, standards of ethics and truth, because I do think it's great that and basically anybody can report on anything. But I do also think it's incredibly important that we acknowledge that those kind of ethics and standards and guidelines do exist for legitimate reasons, and that, like you were saying, anyone online can say anything. So approaching it with that kind of lens of skepticism and criticism, I think is probably the healthy way to go. Is what I'll say to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think too with like the Denver Post occasionally gets it right. Like, I guess my experience with that is that usually if they're getting it right, it's because there's an individual journalist who is real fucking committed to like doing actual journalism. It's some, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but we can be sure that like the owners of these big, magazines and media outlets and newspapers are not, encouraging that type of reporting. But a lot of people who get into journalism are doing it because they are truth seekers and they want to tell a real story, and so like I think like when I have seen them get it right, it's been because there's like one really good journalist who is like, I'm gonna fucking get this right and I'm gonna fight to get it right. Speaking as I was interviewed for a story about sex workers years ago, and they did a really, really good job. The writer did a really, really good job, and it was because he wanted to do a good job. So like I definitely have love in my heart for individual journalists. And like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Ken Klippenstein, like that dude's a fucking goat. Like that dude is out here doing real fucking journalism and has been for a long time. And it's really, really important work, I think, for leftist movements, the type of, like we need that shit, and we need reporters that are willing to fucking be brave and do the work. And like, it pains me so much to say this, but even like Glenn fucking Greenwald, who is such an insufferable piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know what though? He really put his neck out there for the Snowden article, and that was a long time ago. And honestly, Edward Snowden's also kind of an insufferable piece of shit. But like, that was a big fucking deal. That was good. I mean, did anything really happen from it? I don't know, but it woke a lot of people up to the level of, the fact that our own government is literally spying on us through our phones. Like, Glenn Greenwald was instrumental in getting that message out to us. And it wasn't just conjecture, it was well researched. But yeah, I think that's, another point just about how those structures, the journalistic ethics and standards can be harmful. I think this is kind of a good, if you're the victim, if you're, a member of a marginalized class, if you're a leftist, it's inherently dangerous for you. It can be inherently dangerous for you to go on the record, or to, where it's not, if you're an official spokesperson for like Evil Corporation Inc., it's not dangerous for you to go on the record. And so it's like we have this power disparity where those of us that are already vulnerable are taking much bigger risks by putting ourselves out there like that. And so like that is an important, I think, perspective to maintain when we talk about, journalism and journalistic standards. Yeah. So,
well,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say like about, my beef is not with any like individual. I mean, there's plenty of individual journalists who like deeply suck and are, but there's also plenty of them who, like you said, got into that business for great and, fucking good reasons. I think my beef and our beef is with, rather than like an individual like Denver Post reporter, it's with an entity that is owned by Alden Global Capital.
Right.
That is where it's bad.
Right.
And they are capable of producing, worthwhile or valuable, or like, I think we were talking about this a couple episodes ago, like, if you consider the role of journalism as something that is to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, those things do exist for sure. I do think in the final analysis, there is a hard cap on the level to which an organization like something like the Denver Post or any of the other, this Alden Global Capital owns a dozen fucking newspapers, like big newspapers, like they own the Chicago Tribune. They own, Bezos owns the fucking Washington Post. So there's going to be a hard cap on the degree to which they are able to express what I think people in this community and people who share our political beliefs would like to see. And oftentimes they are going to be directly antagonistic towards it.
Absolutely. I mean, they were right. The beef is not with individual journalists. It's like they will go out and there are some shitty ones, but it's like they'll go out and write a story, research a story, and then, the corporate overlords kill the story because Jeff Bezos is never going to be like, yes, write about the fucking union busting that me and my shitty billionaire colleagues are doing. They go out, these hedge funds went out and bought all these papers so that they can control the narrative and control the information that we receive. And, the whole idea of manufacturing consent, Noam, shout out to Noam Chomsky and the other dude who wrote that book, whose name I don't remember. But there's it's a whole thing it's a whole system that the government and the media are wrapped up into, where, the fact that the media will continue to call the genocide in Palestine, they will call that the Israel-Hamas war. It's like, that's because the people in power insist that they call it that, insist that they don't call it a genocide. And because the powerful, capitalist class owns all of the media outlets. So like, we don't hear the truth, or we don't hear the other perspective. And that is why, as you said, the gumshoe live streaming reporting is real fucking important, because that's the only reason that I think the tide has shifted on Palestine, is because like, we've seen with our own eyes what that shit looks like over there, and like, there's no amount of spin that you can put on what's happening when people have seen so many videos of children just getting blown up and just the most horrific suffering and starvation that a person has ever seen. So like, I mean, that shit is important, but the other side of that coin is Do Better Denver, is people who are out here filming homeless people and they have no accountability. We talked about that in the Do Better Denver episode, where it's like, at least if Bennito writes an article that we think is factually inaccurate, we know who wrote it, right? We can contact him and say, hey, what the fuck are you doing? If we don't like his answer, we have an editor that we can go to. We can research who owns the company and why they may have written that article. And there's some semblance of accountability for people who are quote unquote capital J, big journalists who stand by their work, versus, some bitch in New Mexico who doesn't even live in Denver, who has no accountability and can just say whatever she wants with, zero repercussions. So, I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to parse out, but I guess my larger point is like, the corporate media apparatus, yeah, that's our enemy. Individual journalists, not necessarily our enemy, and a lot of times actually are our allies, can be our allies. And, the work they do is important. Yeah, I guess that's probably my big overarching takeaway from that.
No, for sure.
Right. And just also, that like, there's three sides to every story. There's my side, there's your side, and there's the truth. And it doesn't mean that anybody's lying. It just means that we all experience the same events differently, and we have different interpretations and different takeaways from those events. And that's just kind of one of the really messy parts about being human, I guess, is that, you get 5 eyewitness accounts, and rarely are they gonna, all line up with each other. And even if they do, then you might see video footage of what happened and it might not line up with any of them. So,
Well, and
you
even
know,
the video footage, it's like even the video footage is going to be devoid of certain context or literally filmed
right,
from that person's perspective. It's like
right,
it's your two people are standing on either side of a mountain, and the person on the west side sees it one way, the person on the east side sees it another. They're both seeing quote unquote the truth, but they're not seeing the same thing. It's the fucking
totally,
6 and 9 thing, It's
right,
like, yeah.
right. And it's really hard to to parse out what actually happened from that. And so, we sometimes get it wrong. Yeah, that's that on that, I guess. But feel free to check out both the Westword article and the Denver Wire article, watch the video, draw your own conclusions. And yeah, that's
I think that's ultimately the thing is really to draw your own conclusion, just to, you should have enough kind of faith in yourself and enough level of ontological security to trust yourself to make your own conclusions, and kind of use that as a bastion, or as a lens to, either in this instance, like determine what you think happened at this protest, on a kind of like hyper local level, or I think perhaps with a little bit more kind of global valence, like identify when you're being clearly lied to, like when a genocide is called a conflict, or when a blatant human rights violation is called the Cheesecake Factory. Need to be careful.
I don't know.
About
I feel like the Cheesecake Factory is gets a lot of undeserved hate. I think
I've never actually been there, but
wow. So you weren't even there, and you have the audacity to have an opinion about the Cheesecake Factory? Wow. No, it's not great. It's a chain restaurant, but it's got a diverse menu, and honestly, the cheesecake kind of slaps. And I'm a cheesecake. I'm kind of a cheesecake snob. I'm picky about cheesecake. It's not that bad. But yeah.
Is that our sponsor for this week?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That should be our sponsor.
We're sponsored by the Cheesecake Factory in the Tabor Center. As we've said on this podcast before, if you work at the Cheesecake Factory in their Tabor Center, spit in the food of Palantir employees.
Or just leave their cheesecake out of their takeout order, deliberately leave the cheesecake out and then act like you put it in there and they are lying and they stole it. Or if they order a chocolate cheesecake, maybe throw the pumpkin one in and be like, my God.
That's perfect.
Just little bits of sabotage just to make their lives a little shittier. We definitely support that. And if you got to eat at a chain, and honestly, and if you're gonna go to the fucking Cheesecake Factory, you probably need a reservation, or you're gonna be waiting half an hour, and and I'll tell you, sometimes an hour. I've been in the fucking Park Meadows one where it was a 90-minute wait, and you guys, let me just tell, it's not worth a 90-minute wait. That's
real sicko mode, dude. Waiting
right. It's a chain fucking restaurant with pretty bland mid food. It's higher up than other chain restaurants, but for God's sake, love yourself enough to not wait 90 minutes to eat at the Cheesecake Factory. There are better options. I don't know what's wrong with this country.
Is it really substantially different than Applebee's? To me, it's just Applebee's.
It's elevated Applebee's with the bread is good. It's elevated Applebee's with the bread is good and a more extensive menu. So yeah, it's a step up from Applebee's. I'll say that.
Okay.
I think so, but I'm a Cheesecake Factory apologist, obviously.
No, because I have waited for a table at an Applebee's on multiple occasions in my life. This is what growing up in rural America will do to you, is you go to the Walmart on a Friday for fun, and then you wait for a table at Applebee's. That is a thing that happened to me multiple times. So
that's pretty grim. That's pretty grim stuff, my friend.
Maybe the man who I am today.
Don't love that for you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Should we look at the week ahead?
Yes, let's look at the week ahead.
All right. Again, remember, we don't have bug, and neither one of us super wants to do this, but it is also, I think, in as much as what we do has any like iota of value, it could possibly be this. The San Luis Valley Pride Fest, long rumored, I'm assuming is still happening, it's on their calendar, is coming up this Saturday, August 23rd at 11 a.m. in something called Cole Park in Alamosa. So if you are in the SLV, or if you just want to do like a day trip, go down to the dunes, go to the fucking UFO towers, go to the SLV Pride Fest, August 23rd, 11 a.m. This is per the Denver DSA calendar, which I'm led to believe is very accurate. It seems like it is pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's usually pretty accurate.
August 20th, which is this Wednesday, the Palantir Out of Denver campaign kickoff call is happening at 6 p.m. Looks like there's a Zoom link on there. We also, we mentioned the stuff, Tesla takedown, Gabe Evans office protests, the Fox takedown. These are kind of the standing protests. If anyone knows of any changes to that, please do let us know. And we also, coming up a little bit later out, but on the 29th of August, that's Labor Day weekend, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It bothers me there's a lot of things that bother me about this country, in case that wasn't clear. One of the minor things that bothers me about this country is that the Labor Day here is not the International Labor Day.
Oh, it's a goddamn crock of shit, and very intentional, because they want to erode our solidarity with workers around the world. It should be May 1st. May 1st is Labor Day everywhere in the world except for this fucking shithole.
It's so desperately should be. But such as it is this year, September 1st. The Saturday before that, August 29th, we have Chicano moratorium. I'm led to believe this will be, it seems like there's a lot of kind of energy being put into this one, so this might be a larger one, which is why we're giving it 2 weeks heads up.
Yeah.
That's all I got for the week ahead.
Yes, that is what we have for the week ahead. I don't know if we said, if you want to do the DSA call, if you just go to denverdsa.org and look at the calendar, if you click on it, usually have I'm sure it's a Zoom call, so you can just do the Zoom link. And you don't have to be a DSA member. Like if you're just you're like, oh, I would love to kick Palantir out of Denver, but I don't really know much about DSA or whatever. Like you can just go on the call and see what's happening and get involved with it. And if you want to join DSA after that, you can, but you don't have to. So that's just something to keep in mind, for that one. But yeah, I think, seems like this week is going to be pretty slow, but keep your eye on the Discord and the subreddit, because sometimes we might have what AJ termed a wildcat protest, where it just kind of pops up spontaneously out of nowhere. So if that's your kind of vibe, keep an eye, because something may pop up between now and the weekend.
Wildcat. Yeah. And also there should be the Denver DSA usually does a social for folks who live in the kind of center city area. I think it's they call it the Cap Hill social, but that should be coming up at some point.
Yeah,
I don't see that they post anything about that, but keep your eyes out for that, because those
Central Denver, technically they do have other the other areas. There's one for Southwest Denver.
Yeah.
That gets posted there sometimes, so that's a little more informal, but there are basically just informal monthly DSA meetups for different areas of Denver, and that's a good entry point if you kind of just want to go grab a drink and meet some people from DSA in a low pressure social environment. That is a good place to do it. So we could try, if we see those pop up, we can try to mention them.
If you know what? I'm looking at the calendar right now. It is actually on there for the 29th at 7:30. So there might be some overlap with the Chicano moratorium on that day. But anyway, that's when it is, at least per the calendar. So, but yeah, I think that's it. I think those are all the things we have coming up in the week ahead.
Cool. Make sure to check out denverprotest.com, where you can find links to all of our various things. You can find us on Reddit. You can find us on Discord. You can find us on Threads and Instagram. You can find us on Blue Sky and here at the Denver Protests podcast. So go to denverprotests.com to see more.
Like, subscribe, leave comments. Yeah, do all that if you want.
Cool. And, just practice your critical thinking skills out there, people. Flex those critical thinking muscles, I think, is the takeaway from today, at least for me. So, yeah.
I love it. Mine have long since atrophied, so if I try to flex it might...
I mean, we all, right? I really do feel like we all took a major hit to our critical thinking in COVID, and we could all probably stand to rebuild those skills. So let's do it, everyone.
Touch grass, think critically.
Yeah.
Go with God.
And maybe eat at the Cheesecake Factory if you're into like long waits and like kind of mid but okay food. So
that is our sponsor.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for being here. We love you all, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.